picking it up this week, halfway through the show, and setting up for Saturday night's main event in 2 weeks. The final Saturday night's main event ever. Because I will be discontinuing the show after this and focusing more on pay-per-view. Because to this point, I had just been focused on Saturday night's main event and the occasional pay-per-view, and now I'm shifting towards the occasional Saturday night's main event and more focused on pay-per-view because I can make more money. And yes, I'm aware that some of these gimmicks first time he can chew this time around. I know that some of these gimmicks still fit the cartoony era of WWE and not the Attitude Era, but if you think about it, well, actually, there is no defending it. Yes, 100%, 10 times over, a lot of these gimmicks do fit the, well, actually, Papa Shango, Unabomb are the only two. The others can change as it goes. And, maybe the Godwins run their course after a while, but right now they're fine. Public Enemy, whatever the case may be. But I feel like that's also one of the differences between my WWE and real WWE. And that is the fact that in my WWE, there was, I started phasing out the gimmicks in 1991, 1992. I didn't bring more gimmicks in 1996, or, when was it? 1995? Yeah, give or take probably 1995 when they were doing the, T.L. Hopper and Duke Droese and, Fantazo and Bastion Booger and all those guys. The new generation, but the gimmicks where the gimmick had a second job outside of WWE, which, if anything, damaged WWE more than damaged the guy, because, it made it seem like they weren't getting paid enough to work for WWE alone, and that's why they had to have the second job. It didn't make them seem cool or something like that. It just made WWE seem like they weren't paying them enough to work. Or wrestler, garbage man by day, wrestler by night. Or retired baseball player, or a hockey player. I didn't mind Skinner, but, as you can tell, I minded the other people. Scorpio is currently feuding with The Undertaker still. That he's not of Undertaker. This coming off the heels of Undertaker challenging Scorpio and referencing a casket match to end the feud at Saturday night's main event, but now Scorpio is standing his ground and having and basically stating a fact that he's not afraid of The Undertaker. And much like you saw earlier Bret Hart is going to sit with, when Ric Flair and Owen sat with Vince, sits with Steamboat and Bret Hart ahead of J.J. Dillon's decision next week. The reason for Ricky Steamboat's inclusion is that Ricky has a long history with Ric Flair. He has a long history with Owen, going back to the Royal Rumble 1995 when Ricky Steamboat came back to the WWE and was teaming with Owen against Paul Roma and I believe it was the Warlord. Or am I going crazy here? It might have been 94. I could be wrong. Oh yeah, it was 94. See how much time flies? Because 95 he was going for the Intercontinental title. And actually won the Intercontinental title. And then dropped it. He won it in March at WrestleMania, and then dropped it in December to Lance Storm. Who, as I mentioned last time, Lance, is on his way to WCW, and dropped his title to Brian Lee, who's feuding with, who's with Chris Candido. Well, I know what feuds they're doing, and I know how I would present it, but it's just knowing how to pencil in the last 40 minutes of the show and pattern it out to where I push what I want to push. You follow what I mean? It's like not having... No, I'm surprised I never did that shit. It's like not having... it's like not having... Well, that's what I was going to say. In 2 weeks, it's Saturday Night's Main Event. So that means 2 weeks to the pay-per-view. So that means you gotta push the world title match, you gotta push other marquee matches, Taker and Scorpio, Vader and Candido, whatever. But also, you gotta figure out the rest of the card. That's where Papa Shango comes in. That's where Butch Reed may come in. That's where, whatever the case may be, that's where the tag team division comes in, or whatever. But the point is, the best way for me to explain it is, I'm not trying to build the Attitude Era overnight. I'm trying to do it over an extended period of time. That's why I made it a series. I didn't make it a series to show how in 1 week or, in a month I could go from the Attitude Era to, from the New Generation until the Attitude Era without really, having any plan or, consideration or just, whatever, and just, doing it, just like a flick of the wrist. I wanted to stretch it out and do it progressively and move in that direction progressively, not overnight. Because that's stupid to do it overnight, because it's ostracizing. You're ostracizing your fan base and stopping them from enjoying what they've gotten used to seeing from your company. main reason why it worked in WWE at the time, in my opinion, is because what WWE was presenting at the time before the Attitude Era sucked. Yes, there may have been some portion of it that was okay, or good, or average, at least. But for the most part, a lot of what WWE was putting out at this time, in real life, sucked. But once things started to change progressively. Like for WCW, what started to change WCW's fortunes was the 1995 or 1996 feud, or it probably went from 1995 to 1996, with Randy Savage and Ric Flair. That started to turn the fortunes of WCW and started helping business right itself. What helped WWE? Time. It was the right time. Timing was everything for the WWE. And they just struck and took a risk, because they knew if they didn't take that risk, they would have went out of business. Because they were struggling at the time. This is common knowledge that they were struggling at the time, to the point of where if they did not make a change, they would have went out of business. They would have filed for bankruptcy. They would not be around today if it wasn't for the Attitude Era. All I'm saying, if you're a first-time viewer of this series and you haven't been watching the previous episodes, all I'm saying, the only reason why I'm doing this is because I think there could have been a different way of doing it, and doing it slowly and progressively, so the expectations on a week-to-week basis did not go up and up and up and up and up, to make it where you can't top yourself, instead of keeping it at a reasonable pace and letting nature take its course, instead of, you gotta top yourself every week because you went through 2 tables one week, you gotta go through 4 tables the next. No. That's dumb. That's dumb. If you had somebody get thrown off the stage this week, then a year from now, somebody else could get thrown off the stage, but in a different way. Or 6 months from now, somebody can get thrown off the stage in a different way. Because you don't want to overdo it. Because if it's a tool that could help you sell tickets, and you run it into the ground, why are you going to run it into the ground? Because then that can't be your tool to help you sell tickets anymore. Because it's not profitable, because people have seen it too often. Like, for whatever reason, an undefeated streak is always profitable. An undefeated streak is always profitable. But it's what happens after the streak that begs the question if the undefeated streak was worth it or not. It could be profitable, it could help develop a new star, but if you don't develop a new star and you end up having, like, Yokozuna's undefeated streak and Yokozuna's push in the early 90s helped WWE 100%. But did Ryback having an undefeated streak help WWE? No. Did Lex Luger, when he became the narcissist, did his undefeated streak help WWE? No, but Mr. Perfect's did. It is customary for new signees to have an undefeated streak from the outset. But it's what happened. Look at Umaga. What did Umaga do after his undefeated streak ended? What did Rusev do after his undefeated streak ended? Nothing. It doesn't matter what you do during the streak, it matters what you do after. wants to brush off running from a fight. Well, how about I stop him from running next time? I will admit that Vader had been struggling with direction recently, and for the most part had no proper set way to go. You know, that's not untrue. He, you know, for the longest time, Vader had nothing to do. Vader was just there. You know, Vader had feuded with Hulk Hogan and then disappeared. Then he came back and was the Undertaker's first title defense. When Undertaker won the title from Bret Hart last year, freshly turned babyface Vader fighting the Undertaker, who just turned heel. So things are a lot different than they were when Taker won the belt. But in the same token, you know, other than that, Vader was not doing anything before I made him start a feud with Chris Candido a little bit before WrestleMania. And now he's trying to help Candido because, you know, the main reason why Chris Candido is where he is right now is because of his feud with Bret Hart. Wait, wrong thing. Sorry. It's because of his feud with Bret Hart. You know, he was here in April 1995. He starts his feud with Bret Hart, and he starts going up. And he starts going up. And he's slowly but surely ascending to the main event. Same with Brian Lee. Brian Lee is in the position that he's in because of the feud with Bret Hart. The Harris brothers are in the position that they're in because of the feud with Bret Hart. That's what I'm trying to do with the Godwins, having Steve Austin and Brian Pillman elevate the Godwins, like I'm trying to have Vader further elevate Chris Candido and Brian Lee by having segments and moments and matches with them to help them get elevated and move forward. Because the plan is always get new guys over, get the future set. Because otherwise you'll end up like WWE after Austin and Rock and all those guys left, where you needed more people, but you didn't have any. And then you leaned on the WCW guys, and every one of them fell flat. So you gotta invest in the future while the future is still the future, not while the future, like you can't have it be Carlito and Chris Masters where they invested in him to a point, but never gave him the ball. And that's why I'm giving people chances, because all you have to do, simply, is put a guy like him in a segment with somebody more popular than him, and then the obvious will happen that if he works with the guy who's more popular than him often enough, he's going to get popular himself. That's what happened to Candido. That's what happened to this person. That's what happened to the Raven, Mankind, Papa Shango, Unabomb, and their feud with The Undertaker last year. Or 2 years ago into last year. Either way, the Irish Iron Man, formerly known as Shane Shamrock, rechristened himself as the Irish Iron Man. And Shane Shamrock's push is about to commence. Dave Finlay wins again, continuing his win streak. You know, Dave Finlay is one of those guys that I think would fit perfectly into the Attitude Era. Or would have fit perfectly into the Attitude Era because he's similar to Steve Regal, a no-nonsense brawler who will kick your ass just as much as, will give you a hug just as quick as he kicks your ass. And Butch Reed, again, in my opinion, would fit that era because he's the veteran that's holding on, that can't let go, and now he's on a losing streak, which he actually is on a losing streak. He just lost to Ricky Steamboat last week, and he's 3-7 this year. I looked before, or as I was writing the show. But either way, he's back on the winning track this week after beating Alex Wright, but setting up a bigger picture for Butch Reed, whose contract is up, or coming up, and I may actually re-sign him depending on how this goes. No, Ric Flair was supposed to be on camera in this segment. Oh well. But either way, the point is, Vince is sitting down with Owen and Flair. He's in the middle, Owen's on one side, Flair's on the other. They argue their case of why Owen deserves the shot and Bret doesn't, why Flair's afraid of him, and that's why he wants Bret to get the shot, because J.J. Dillon's going to be on the show next week, and he's going to be on the show next week and announce who will be challenging Ric Flair at Saturday Night's Main Event at the end of the month. And as you see here, Brian Lee's feuding with the Honky Tonk Man because his first title defense as Intercontinental Champion will be against the greatest Intercontinental Champion of all time, the Honky Tonk Man. Because the Honky Tonk Man has a little bit more popularity than Brian Lee. So I'm trying to help Brian Lee up, but keep Honky where he is, but have Honky Tonk Man pull Brian Lee up to where he is and not pull Honky Tonk Man down to where Brian Lee is. But we'll see what happens. Papa Shango beats Steve Armstrong, and then we get the promo with Papa Shango on his own for the first time, because Raven's usually his mouthpiece. But Raven's not in this feud right now. I don't know if he will be in the future, but he's not in it right now. Against Papa Shango, it's Papa Shango and the Unabomber against Rob Van Dam, 2-on-1. And that's it. It's just Papa Shango and the Unabomber. It's not Raven, it's not Mankind, it's just Papa Shango and the Unabomber. They are still together in a stable, but first time they're on their own. I wanted to see how they would do. It's the first time on their own. Jerry Lynn and Too Cold Scorpio. Scorpio keeps his winning ways going, which is needed because he's going into a match with The Undertaker. So he needs to keep proving himself every time he gets in that ring. And this is how it was supposed to go earlier with Ric Flair, but also this was supposed to count towards Owen Hart's feud with Ricky Steamboat and Bret Hart's feud with Ric Flair. But again, either way, it still counts to the show. John Bradshaw beats Spider. The identity of Spider doesn't really matter because he's just a local talent, or a guy from developmental that I didn't want to put under a name because of where he was in the card. I just want to put him under a mask, let him job, then I can unmask him and start him fresh with the name that he's supposed to have. Now we move to the continuation of the tag team title picture with Rock and Roll Express. Last week it was Gary Hart standing up to Bobby Heenan asking why Hollywood Blondes get another shot when they lost at WrestleMania and Ahmed Johnson and Diesel won. And now Rock and Roll have their nose in the business too, because they have unfinished business with Ahmed Johnson and Diesel after Gary Hart's guys attacked the Rock and Roll 2 weeks ago on Raw. The Undertaker beats Kelly Shields, who should be getting released soon, I think. Vader steals the show with another promo. And Shawn Michaels with King Kong Bundy. Jimmy Hart causes the DQ. Still a solid match. That's why I booked it. And continues Shawn Michaels' feud with Jeff Jarrett, which, again, is exactly the same as Undertaker and Too Cold Scorpio. Undertaker's trying to pull up Too Cold Scorpio. Honky Tonk Man's trying to pull up Brian Lee. Vader's trying to pull up Chris Candido. Michaels is trying to pull up Jeff Jarrett. The reason for this is because other than Flair, Bret Hart, Undertaker, Vader, Ricky Steamboat, and Shawn Michaels, that's 6 guys. There's only so much time those 6 guys can do. There's only so many times that those 6 guys can work together before it gets old, and that's why Shawn needs to work with somebody to bring them up to the top of the card. Rick will probably do that eventually, but Shawn needs to do it. Taker did so well with Papa Shango, Rob Van Dam, Raven, and those group of guys that I wanted him to do it again with Scorpio. Is it possible? I think if for that to happen, it needs to happen over the course of an extended period of time and not a minute amount of time. So I don't know how much of a difference Taker will have on Scorpio, but either way, this is the show. Another solid episode of Raw, but I just wanted to explain something first. I know in the previous episodes I've shown signs of the Attitude Era coming and things changing and moving more towards a TV 14 rating, where there's more violence, more undertones, and more, graphic programming, but I want to lay the pieces down for that to happen, rather than, again, jumping in without setting anything up. Jumping in before the pool is warm, as opposed to setting it up and then going in. I want to set up my guys, I want to set up my pieces before expecting them, as opposed to expecting them to already be there and prepared for what's coming. You need to learn Taker's like this, and Shawn Michaels is like that, and, maybe Ricky Steamboat doesn't fit the Attitude Era, but Bret Hart might, or Owen Hart fits it, but, this person doesn't. It's working out the kinks, and probably by this time next year, 1997, not 2021, by this time next year, we'll be, if not in it, very, very close to being in it. But we'll see what happens. All I'm saying is, it's step by step. It's not something that happens overnight. And that's how I'm doing it, because I'm putting the pieces in place and setting things in motion in a very, very meticulous manner, because that's how things work. Because if you plan ahead and you know where you're going before you get there, if something goes wrong, you can change it, and you don't have to have it on the fly. Because if Taker's feuding with Michaels 6 months from now and Taker gets injured, then I can change it, and it's not a big deal, because Shawn's feuding with Jeff Jarrett now, and Taker in 6 months, Taker's injured, so I can switch him out for somebody else and build someone up, like a Raven, or, whatever. Because that's what I'm doing now. I could take somebody that I'm fixing up now and put him in that spot. That's why long-term planning works. Do I know where I'm going? Do I know what the company's going to look like in a year? No. Could I guess? Yeah, there's going to be a little bit more over the top. There's going to be a little bit more attitude to it. But it's going to happen over time, and I hope that you're here to watch it. Because as I continue to throw formats at the wall to see what sticks, this is more the old style of video. Let me know down in the comment section below if you prefer the way we did it last week, with a recap at the beginning and then going into the show. Or if you prefer it this way, let me know down in the comment section below. And if you want to know when a new video is up on the channel, you gotta subscribe to the channel and ding down that notification bell to always know when there's new action and activity on the channel. Till next time.